Today, I'm going to try to draw this planter in Tallinn, Estonia, and it's about time I did something like this. I have been so preoccupied with some of these larger scenes recently that the smaller stuff has been kind of put on the back burner. At the end of the day, it all kind of exercises the same muscle, I suppose, but the way that I think about something like this versus something grander in scope is quite a bit different, so I'm glad to be giving it a shot today. As you can see, I'm getting started with the plant box, and this area of the drawing is where I'll spend the majority of my time. If you remember my drawing of a bicycle from a few weeks ago in Krakow, you'll remember the beautiful dappled lighting in that video, which I did not attempt to draw. Unfortunately, as nice as it looks, I'll be taking exactly the same approach here. Candidly, the dappled lighting made up more than 50% of the reason why I chose to draw this, and it was my intention to include it in the drawing up until about the time I started recording. If you haven't heard me mention it already, I carry around a small pocket sketchbook so that I can better visualize how I might approach these drawings. And in it today, I made 3 attempts at this with 3 different approaches, none of which panned out. First, I tried starting with the dappled light, but the dark areas made drawing anything underneath them impossible, so I scrapped that one. Then I tried drawing the entire background, loosely, that is. I do these sketches quickly, they're just for testing things out. And I added the dappled light on top, but the technique I used to shade it made it look like a tree standing in front of everything else rather than just its shadow, which is obviously not ideal. And then lastly, I used a subtler, I guess more specific shading technique where I would use only vertical hatching for the shadows and then horizontal lines for everything else. But when I got to the bottom section, as you can see, I needed to draw those vertical lines on the wall and everything got messy from there. I think with another few attempts, I could have figured it out or at least found a reasonable workaround. But then I remembered the other reason why I wanted to do this drawing, the other 50 or so percent, and I decided to give myself a break and just draw what I ultimately end up drawing. If I had time, I thought I could maybe include the dappled light at the end somehow, but I was pretty much set on omitting them, which I know is a shame because they are what make this reference beautiful, but I am truly just not there yet. I know what I want, but I can't yet grasp it, and that's okay. On the positive side, I was able to really observe this reference, which helped me learn a few things. None of these things really mattered all that much in the end, but it was still good for me in terms of practice. So for example, while I was trying to make the dappled light work in my pocket sketchbook, it started to sink in that those shadows aren't the darkest part of the scene. If I split the reference into 3 values, I'd have the highlights on the wall and the box with its plants, the mids actually in the shadow of the tree, which surprised me, and then the darkest parts underneath the planter, the lines on the wall, and within the plants themselves. As I tried figuring out how to include the dappled lighting, I kept assuming that those shadows would be by far the darkest, and it was only through focused observation and practice that I noticed otherwise. I've said it a million times, but while that may be apparent on screen, it's not so straightforward in person. The area below the planter was actually perfectly visible to me at the moment of drawing it, but if I understand correctly, that's just my eye adjusting for that darker area, and the lighter areas kind of go out of focus, for want of a better explanation. Like a camera set to auto exposure, it can see the dark parts and the light parts evenly when directed at them, but given the whole scene, it has to decide how best to evenly expose for it, which is why in the video, that area is practically black for you. Had I exposed for that area, forcing it to look the way that I was capable of seeing it in person, The brighter areas would be overexposed as a consequence, which is kind of like sitting in the dark when someone turns on the lights. Anyway, I say all of that to explain just how imperceptible some of these things are, and how by really taking it all in, and especially trying to draw it, the picture becomes clearer and clearer, and that's probably a good analogy for this whole series. Okay, so while I finish up these plants, I wanted to mention how stuff like this is just generally starting to feel pretty good. I've done a lot of quick practicing at home, like sketching little plants here and there, and I think I'm going in the right direction. Obviously, you can see that these are anything but precise, but they're moving closer to realism despite that, and that's my aim. I don't need them to look exactly correct for now, even though that's the long-term goal, but I do want them to resemble something that could be real. So while the flowers end up being these vague, oblong shapes on top of a pile of texture, I'm just glad they're not childlike flowers with exaggerated petals and stems. Again, I'm spending time observing what these things look like, flowers or not, and trying to interpret that. One thing that's helped me achieve this look is not being scared to add totally black areas of shadow within the empty or denser areas. In the reference, you can see that the bottom of that plant on the right, flower plant, you know what I mean, uh, you can see how dark it gets. The same goes for small areas between, and I'm trying to imply that with some bolder decisions in my drawing. I'm still way off and could have added a lot more contrast here, but I'm just taking it one step at a time. In the moment, these dark areas feel sometimes too dark on the paper, even though now I can see that I actually didn't go far enough. From this point on, I will tend to the contextual elements, and by that I mean the side of this building. I considered excluding this part of the reference altogether, but I had some time, and if I ever happened to change my mind about the dappled light, I would need somewhere for it to go where it really would look like just a tree. So for the next few minutes, I have some lines to draw, which really don't make much of a difference to the drawing because, spoiler alert, I don't draw the dappled light. I think by the end of this, I could have allocated a lot more time to the flowers, but aside from going even darker with these areas in shadow, I don't even really know what I would have done. This is exactly why I think I need to include more stuff like this. When I draw a whole scene, there are numerous elements kind of begging for my attention. If I feel unsure about something or like I'm probably finished with this or that, there's always something else to which I can transition. While that makes drawing a lot of fun, it might not be great for my, quote, education, unquote. These small references of single subjects don't give me as much room to play around, which of course comes with its own pitfalls, but they demand my undivided attention if I'm ever going to be good at drawing them. Even here, I'm spending all this time on something I'd honestly deem superfluous, and it doesn't make me a better artist or get me any closer to truly understanding the subject at hand. So I would like to really home in on some subjects over the next few weeks. I won't completely pass up the big scenes that I love so much if I happen to see them, especially if it's a tower. But I'm going to make a concerted effort to approach more and more stuff like this as I can and really buckle down before I move on to the stupid wall behind it, at least in this case. Will I succeed in this? I actually don't know. Drawing outside is a really weird experience. There's so much to consider, and it's made harder as a result of filming it, which, I would prefer look nice. So yeah, who knows? I'll at least be on the lookout for more of these specific subjects over scenes. I can promise you that. Amazing. So here we are. While this is nothing like it was in my head, it's a lot better than I could have done a month ago. So I'll take it. I wish I would have committed more to the shading, and next time I should probably just give the dappled light a shot. But overall, I think it's passable. So let me know what you think in the comments. Are you surprised? Disappointed? Are you hungry? Go eat a sandwich. All right, anyway, I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.